This video is sponsored by Arvagotchi. Arvagotchi is a really cool mix-up of multiple blockchain features, including gaming, NFTs, and DeFi. Fundamentally, how it works is you have to take some tokens. They're called A tokens. They're created by the Aave DeFi protocol, and you use those to mint an Arvagotchi. An Arvagotchi is like a Tamagotchi, but on the blockchain, and it kind of lives around. You have to kind of look after it, and you can play games with it, and you can get wearables for it, and do the kind of cool things that we'd expect to do with it with a kind of living blockchain NFT. But what's interesting is it always has a value because you've taken some of these A tokens to mint it in the first place, and the A tokens always gain an interest rate, so the value goes up. Of course, the value also arises from how the project is developing and the cool things you can do with it. So it's a kind of best of both worlds. It's really cool. I suggest you check it out at arvagotchi.com. Thanks for the sponsorship. Hello and welcome to a Blockchain Gaming World. Episode 86, now into its fourth year, amazingly. I've not actually been that productive on that rate of knots. But anyway, I'm your host, Jon Jordan, and joining me to kick in 2021 is Craig Russo. How's it going, Craig?
Hey, John, it's going well. Thanks for having me.
Good. So Craig is the lead at Polyient Games, which do a number of different things. It's quite a kind of business model, I suppose, or I don't know what we say in the blockchain game space. Everyone's kind of into everything at the moment, I suppose. So I guess you're kind of following that sort of lead. But before we get into what Polyient is doing, Craig, can you maybe give us a bit of background about how you got into this interesting space?
Yeah, so I think much like everybody else that finds their way into the industry, I come from a pretty separate walk of life. So before this, I was actually in biotechnology venture capital. So I worked in early stage pharmaceutical and biotech innovation. And prior to that, I was a neuroscientist working primarily on cell and neurological cognitive science and things like that. And I ultimately got bit by the Bitcoin bug around 2015, 2016. And decided to slowly make my way into the industry, seeing that there was a lot of opportunities that mirrored some of the things I saw in the biotech space. Some of these early stage innovations that have high potential but are high risk and require a lot of catering and support. And so for a number of years, I worked in the kind of media side of things. I still had a foot in the biotech space, but I ran a Sludge Feed, which was an early media outlet within the space. It was me and my friend Tom Stankiewicz. We built that up for a number of years, and then I wanted to combine my work, from the investor and early stage startup perspective, and bring it into the crypto space. And I was highly attuned to the NFT market from covering it within Sludge Feed, and saw the opportunity of really helping to establish and build up the asset class as a true alternative to traditional cryptocurrencies, or the utility tokens of 2017. And so I began work with Polyient, which initially was really focused on early stage blockchain startups as an incubator program. So there's been a number of startups that have gone through that program, and really saw the opportunity to work with them to launch Polyient Games. And so we launched Polyient Games at the onset of 2020. We unveiled it at NFT NYC just before COVID broke out. I think it was the last time everybody traveled.
Absolutely.
And so the central focus of it is, we're an investment group that's really interested in supporting, the growth of the NFT asset class. And we see blockchain gaming as being, one of the best applications, of NFTs. And I think a lot of the early days of NFTs, were really limited in our scope of thinking of what they could be used for. And I think, the kind of the collector and art type of nature is, very awesome. But I think that's just really step one of where we can take this asset class, moving forward. And so we decided to forego a traditional investment firm route for Polyient Games, because any new industry, especially in the crypto space, it's very difficult to deploy capital when there's so few people working in the space, and B, the nature of the risk associated with traditional fund structures for investments is it's kind of untenable for NFTs at this stage. And so we really decided to build Polyient Games ecosystem as a decentralized platform to really bring together parties from all the way from the application layer, from blockchain games to DeFi adjacent protocols, to major layer 1s and layer 2s, to try to bring some uniformity and some interoperability to NFTs. And since that time, we've built out our own token economy within the ecosystem and have been making strategic investments, not only at the startup equity layer, but also at the token and metaverse layer, which is probably the most interesting subject right now for kind of moving into the space. So, we're highly bullish on NFTs in 2021, and really looking forward to some of the innovations that the teams that are starting to emerge can put forth, because I think it's truly the most high potential asset right now, and I think in crypto.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of interesting. So, from my view, at least, kind of the second half of 2020, we had this kind of DeFi kind of thing going on, and all the yield farming, and then again that kind of seemed to flow in terms of the value created there, then seemed to kind of flow into some of the NFT type stuff, and then kicking off this year, we've had this very kind of general kind of structural kind of bull run in pretty much every kind of major token. Do you see those kind of flows as being kind of the tokens is obviously where most people do their investing in crypto. Yeah, did you see that as being complementary to NFTs, or do you think? Because I think if we were having this conversation 2 weeks ago, we would have there would be a different kind of narrative to what we have now, where obviously these very large asset classes like Bitcoin and Ethereum have done whatever 3 times, 4 times in a short period of time, and I guess I would have assumed that probably wouldn't have happened so quickly, but it may have happened to NFTs. So do we have to maybe reassess the gearing between them or something?
Well, I think one of the major issues that has stifled the growth of NFTs is just the very nature of how they exist, right? They're non-fungible, they're illiquid. It's difficult to access unless you're a collector or really understand how to flip and participate in kind of the auction type markets. And so what we are very interested in supporting and building out are ways in which traditional cryptocurrency users can gain liquid access and exposure to the NFT asset class, whether it's through fractional NFTs, through adjacent fungible tokens. Groups like Sandbox and Axie Infinity are building out a lot of unique tokenomics around that. And at the end of the day, I think there needs to be some more innovations around standardization of valuation metrics. Yeah. And I think with kind of the art market that driving everything, and these high exciting sales that are bringing in a lot of interest, I think it really starts to paint a picture that the NFT asset class is unattainable for a lot of people, and what we want to do is to make it accessible. And I think liquidity really is the name of the game, and there's a number of ways to skin the cat, for lack of a better term, to build out these inroads to the market that then will obviously feed into more traditional NFT like purchases. And so instead of going after, I always give this example, instead of going after the Fortnite gamer first, blockchain gaming should go after the cryptocurrency user, which they're more likely than not are gamers, and they understand the markets, they understand crypto. And so that's where we've been focusing the core of our investments to date, as well as our internal product development that we've been doing for the Polyient Games ecosystem.
No, I think as you point out there is the this kind of, I guess, kind of creative tension, certainly tension between there are the kind of, I guess, the more people who've come from a crypto enthusiast background who maybe certainly on the game side haven't kind of made big games before, and they're kind of happy in their ecosystem and they kind of understand it because their users are roughly the same as them. And I guess that's where we would say the majority of those kind of products, I guess, things certainly like Axie Infinity would be the prime example of something like that. And then we're starting to now see people who have experience in making games, just normal kind of games, right? Trying to then not necessarily leverage something in, but for some people the blockchain is the most important, the crypto bit is the most important. For other people, it is important because they're making blockchain games, but they're very much like, well, it has to be as good as Fortnite in order to get people
right.
in.
And I think, and I think we're seeing, Gala Games as an example, and there's a few other groups where it's people that have long track records within traditional gaming are starting to dabble in this space, and a lot of these groups want to bring in and sustain that quality of gaming while looping in elements of blockchain, which it's making a game is freaking difficult. And then making a game with a token economy, that's just a whole nother layer. And so that's where we also see ourselves as being able to facilitate and support more traditional game developers coming into the space, so that we can help function as that financial layer, that blockchain layer, to support their larger token economies. And whether that's designing the token economy, if it's facilitating liquidity via our protocols, or if it's simply building out integrations as it relates to the bridges between the in-app usage of the assets and the NFT representation that can be traded or auctioned and things like that. So I think it's definitely an interesting time that obviously groups like Ubisoft and some other bigger names are looking into the space, but these indie games are always going to be the point of innovation. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the cool blockchain stuff start to emerge. But as with any indie game, it's an uphill battle. But I think it's definitely an exciting time.
And I was actually thinking, just as an aside, really, I was actually thinking it's interesting because I come from the mobile game background, where you have games are typically measured by how many millions of users they have a day compared to how many thousands in blockchain. But it is interesting that some of these games that maybe only have, maybe have only had less than 50,000 people have ever played the game are still have still generated a few $1 million of kind of trading revenue in a year, which are not, and that kind of shows, I guess, it doesn't necessarily scale up if when you scale up that to millions of players, not necessarily going to scale up on the financial side, but it does show, I think, the potential blockchain games, and two, how these kind of these economic systems are actually going to change gaming, where you don't necessarily need millions of players to make a successful game, and actually games can be a bit smaller and a bit niche, and still be sustainable for decades.
Absolutely. I think too with like the traditional indie game model, where it's a lot of like Kickstarter type of systems, where it's people are placing their bets right on what they want to see come to fruition. And I think one of the cool things about blockchain integrations and kind of that adjacent DeFi layer that a lot of these blockchain games can start to tap into is that there's really emerging kind of these types of like meta games. The core team is focused on building out their core application, but it's by having that integration, on-chain integrations, you really can get off the ground running with a lot of cool things that keep people engaged and participating and advocating for your development. And that can only mean good things long term for capital flows and being able to spin up more and more money as you grow. But again, gaming is truly fickle, and to say the least. And so I think it's always a fine balance. And I think the more support that a game can have in its corner, a game development company can have in its corner, the better. And I think that's where it's a combination of community. And again, Axie Infinity does a great job of that, and it's a great example. But in addition to that, we see that funds and more institutional like entities can come into the space and add that layer of trust and support that is missing from it currently. And that's really what we aim to do, because 2016 or 2017, 18, 19, really like the Wild West of NFT market. Everyone's kind of exploring different concepts. Markets can't come and go. But as it becomes more mature, I think more and more institutions will step in the space, and that bedrock of value and bedrock of trust will begin to emerge.
Okay, so we've been talking in fairly abstract terms. Let's go a bit more specific. So about a week ago, I think it was, you announced a company you've already mentioned, Gala Games, who are kind of testing out a few kind of different projects. Have their lead creative worked on Zynga, worked at Zynga, so a traditional kind of game developer going into blockchain. And you guys, I guess it was kind of, well, you can tell me. In my thinking, it was more sort of a kind of a purchase kind of / investment, but you paid $800,000 for a particular NFT in their forthcoming game, Mirandus. And that was actually the NFT was like all NFTs are a one-off, but this was a very singular NFT in that game universe, and it's effectively you've kind of bought the banking system in this game.
Yeah,
so can you explain a little bit about why that's a good deal for you?
So I think what we see as our value long term is building into metaverses that we believe in and supporting the token economies, both as again, a liquidity provider and investor, but also as a facilitator of the DeFi layer. And so our purchase of the Citadel, the Sun NFT from Mirandus, essentially enabled us to become the financial layer on top of the game upcoming, which we see as a pretty high potential title as it relates to mass usage, that kind of the best of the open world concepts related to true in-game ownership, and how that relays into the on-chain activity. And so, the purchase itself, there wasn't any equity involved or anything like that. It was a straight NFT purchase, and it really, stands to show our bullishness on this upcoming metaverse. While we also work with the team in depthly, we meet with them, every few days at this point, building out that token layer, that financial layer that will ingrain with the Polyient Games ecosystem. And so that's everything from our Polyient DEX, which we're building up as being kind of the DEX of adjacent NFTs and fractional NFTs, adjacent tokens to NFTs economies, where we really aim to facilitate that crosstalk between the crypto user on-chain activity with the in-game player. And so there's a lot of things that we can do, and obviously it's very early days for Gala with this, but we aim to support their development along the road there. And with that purchase, it's going to be the most profound Citadel that they have, and unlocks a lot of opportunities as it relates to the land. It's essentially land that we own and that we can craft to our liking. Everything from the look of it to its functionality. So we're excited by the concept, and what we really wanted to do is to put our money where our mouth is as it relates to trust in the metaverse. I think a lot of people are talking about this kind of abstract look at, like, we're all going to move to the digital world, but in order for that to happen, there needs to be substantial support and investment into those worlds that are being built. And I'm a big I like what a lot of groups are doing for like these more general metaverses, but I'm much more focused right now on the targeted metaverses that are attached to a game or are highly focused, because that's what I think will resonate with both gamers and NFT enthusiasts long term. Because I think a lot of the general stuff that we've seen to date as it relates to land and things like that, it doesn't necessarily strike a chord for utility and what it means to actually own that NFT.
Well, it's definitely, I mean, you mentioned it a few times, this kind of learning the lessons from DeFi, and I guess we have seen the early attempts last year, but clearly something that is going to be very important for blockchain games ongoing now is to build those maybe not necessarily those overt features of DeFi into their game, but obviously one, to have knowledge about kind of how those financial systems work, and to in a sense work out what are those features, how they can be holistically integrated into a game structure. Obviously in terms of what you've done there with that NFT, seems to be absolutely in the case where it's the underlying banking system. So not only have you kind of acquired something valuable in that game, but you have the idea. I mean, I guess you can't really work out how much it's worth from that point of view, but there is like some sort of passive income potentially, hopefully, it's designed to have passive income that you will get because people will be using this in the game, and if the game is successful, that potentially could be a very valuable sort of thing. Yeah, I always had the kind of assumption that if you could have bought some sort of inherent NFT, the first NFTs in Clash of Clans or something, 9 years ago.
That's a great example. And I think it is that concept of like what things can become, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the ideas that some of these early games have as it relates to like actual economies that plug into the larger crypto world. I think that's one of the best shots on goal for NFTs to really emerge as a standalone asset class. And we're driving a lot of the innovation for that financial layer, that banking system, and that's why we really, again, it's to the ethos of us wanting to really roll up our sleeves and work with the teams that we're investing in. whether it's, again, through equity or through their assets that they have. And I think that's really what we see as our role is, to facilitate the growth that otherwise would be just another uphill battle. Because again, making games is freaking hard, and making token economies is freaking hard. Doing both at the same time can be a near impossibility unless you have the in-house talent and resources to do so.
So it does equally strike me that the kind of flow goes both ways. So game developers are really having to change, how they think about fundamentally making a game, because now it's got real life economics in it. Equally, from the VC kind of point of view, it's not, VCs have traditionally had access to a lot of money, which is always useful, and equally they have access to their own networks, which is always very important, and kind of be able to kind of train up people who are starting up companies and give good advice and create boards, all that sort of stuff. But this also seems to me, particularly from the way you're talking now, is from the investment point of view. It's not just doing those things. You actually have to have some, a pretty good kind of technical background in terms of, you might be building stuff out. You might be, you might own some land that you have to then contract out people to build a cool thing, a cool castle or whatever it's going to be. And kind of more important than that, you're almost to some degree becoming kind of co-designers of these systems, certainly at this stage. So
right. And I think that this was really from lessons learned of the 2017 era funds, which you described, that had substantial access to capital, were able to deploy it in tokens and startups and blockchain foundations. But when eventually the other shoe dropped as it related to that bubble, a lot of those funds, majority of them, were stuck in a situation where they were super illiquid. They were down substantially on the various tokens that they were invested in, and they had no way to get out of it or to build up again. So we really wanted to build from the ground up, from helping support the infrastructure to truly understand the winners and losers of this space, in order to really drive forward our investment thesis. And that enables us, that on the ground work enables us to better understand where the space is going, maybe even influence the space to what we see as the direction, and ultimately helps us de-risk some of these more substantial investments that we make, like buying land for $800,000, to moving forward. So I think there's no perfect model for crypto general investment, but we're very bullish on the ability for investment groups to be able to actively participate. And we have a development team internal to us that's 15 people now. We're working on across different protocols, different networks, and so it's one of those things where we wanted to add value to our partners, and ultimately, if they succeed, that that comes back to us and builds up our token economy, our decentralized ecosystem, and then obviously from an investment perspective, the monetary return for that is very clear for us. So we're very happy with the system so far.
So you mentioned it already, and it was something actually that kind of partly kind of triggered my interest in talking to you guys. Is you I guess it's in very, very early stages, but you've launched your own decentralized exchange. Now, the question would always be, does the world need another decentralized exchange? Because we've got them coming out our ears at the moment. And obviously with something like Uniswap, anyone can create a liquidity pool for any ERC20 token. So it's not like there's a technological barrier to actually create this sort of stuff. From my kind of looking at it, obviously what you're trying to do is you're creating a exchange which is very highly kind of focused on specific kind of game tokens and kind of guess kind of games within your platform. So why did you decide to do a DEX, and where do you expect that to go at the moment? Where do you expect that to go in future?
As a product. Right. So, right now it's much like everyone else's. It's a Uniswap fork that we're using on Ethereum, which, depending on the day, can be very usable, very not usable. But our vision ultimately is to function as a relay point for the in-game token economies. And I think a lot can be lost in general decentralized exchanges. There's a lacking trust layer associated with that can make newcomers, it's kind of daunting, right? And so what we aim to do with it is to really have it as a hub of that interaction, because our goal with the ecosystem was initially and moving forward is to drive the user interaction with NFTs and the adjacent fungible tokens of their economies. And with that protocol, decentralized exchange protocol, we can for instance plug it into the various games that we're supporting, like Mirandus. We can build it out as it relates to novel use cases of fractionalization and basket tokens. A lot of different groups are working on stuff like that related to the NFT asset class. And so we really do see it as our way to innovate around the NFT asset class while also supporting directly with liquidity and a token purchases and things like that for our partners. And so our goal, our goal with the ecosystem ultimately is to be chain agnostic. We want to see the NFT asset class be ubiquitous, and so we'll go where the activity is and support it where the activity is. But we were working with a number of layer ones and layer twos that are in the NFT space to support and kind of establish Polyient Games, our presence within those networks. But yeah, our ultimately what we're working towards with the DEX too is to build out a kind of a new approach to vaults. So the idea that NFTs can be leveraged for more than in-app utility, and I think again, everything's been really driven by art and gaming, but we're also bullish on NFTs, quote unquote finance NFTs, which can be leveraged for a number of different use cases. NFTs in of itself don't have the utility. It's what it's what is assigned to them. And I think it's a really a blank check right now for the types of use cases that they can fit into. And so that's a core area for our more traditional group that's focused on our NFTs in the future and how they can be used in DeFi and beyond that, leveraging real world assets and things like that.
Just going to kind of dig into one of the points you mentioned there, which I'm kind of interested in. So there's, I think 2021 generally in blockchain, we've seen Ethereum, be basically, sucked all the value into Ethereum and now, but Ethereum is this kind of creaking beast at the moment until Ethereum 2 comes out. We all kind of know that's the case. And actually now we've, I guess in the past we've had stuff like EOS and Tron, which haven't kind of gained traction and are sort of, to my mind at least, dying away. But now we're having these much more I don't know, third generation, fourth generation, I don't know what we call them, but these new blockchains, basically no gas fees, very, very fast finality, and kind of I don't know, they just kind of feel very different, but and they're all kind of looking to bridge over to Ethereum and take stuff over, and I guess most recently we've just there's been a deal with a games company, Animoca Brands, and Binance Smart Chain to do NFTs on there, and but when I was thinking about this kind of thing, it's interesting that I do kind of wonder if, and maybe this is just my kind of like, I don't know, poetic mind speaking, that to me some blockchains seem to have an audience that likes some things and not others, even though technically those other things could work on those blockchains. I guess a good example is Tron. So Tron's always been, no matter what Tron does, Tron's always about gambling. You can launch a game on Tron, but people who are on Tron want to gamble. They don't want games. With EOS, it seems a bit different. Maybe there was gambling once and now there's games, and gambling doesn't work on EOS because of on Ethereum because of technical issues. But I do kind of wonder whether, and this is very kind of personal, I suppose, whether just some blockchains will work better for certain things, and maybe I kind of wonder that these very fast blockchains where you can do lots of transactions and maybe run games fully on chain just won't have this kind of, I don't know, like felt solidity where because NFTs, while they can be used in games, equally are just these kind of things that can sit there and accumulate value. I don't know. It's not really a question. It's more an observation.
I think
know where I'm going with it.
That's a great point. I think it's, I think everyone that's built a layer 1 or layer 2 has pitched it as being general purpose. But I agree with that sentiment that, the winners will emerge if they find a niche that they really can hold on to and grow. And I think a good example recently is, Matic Network, for instance. They leaned early into blockchain gaming, and I think that's starting to pay dividends for them as a lot of groups are beginning to move from layer 1 Ethereum over to Matic. And I think the recent one was the Avagachi group, decided to delay their launch to do it on Matic, and so it's very interesting seeing that emerge. And at the end of the day, what I'm always going to be bullish on Ethereum as being the first hub of user access. And so I think any group that's building a layer 1 or layer 2 needs to have that bridge and that presence, so that they can then start to pitch, all right, you went down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, then you made it your way all the way to Ethereum. And, now you're here, it's a process that we've all gone through. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for more scalable environments, especially as it relates to NFTs. But it's definitely not going to be, fully ubiquitous. There's probably going to be, probably 3 or 4 emergent people that are really focused on it. And obviously, groups like Flow coming into the space, with the track record that they do, it's going to be very interesting. But what ultimately is going to, move into is making sure that we can have proper methods of representation of NFTs across chains. That's one of the difficult things, is that, the ability to transfer from one chain to the other, those proper bridges that, do you burn it, do you store it? Like a lot of those questions that I don't think a lot of people are asking quite yet. But, I think the ERC 721, 1155 is going to be here to stay. And, we're for development activity, we're going to keep focusing on Ethereum for the near term. But we're working with a lot of partners like that to kind of understand how they're focusing on the NFT asset class. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, because I think DeFi is going to be one of the gold rushes, and then there's going to be groups going after NFTs, and like you said, gambling and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be specializations being the name of the game eventually.
It's always been interesting to me that kind of, Ethereum has kind of nothing to do with games, but on the DeFi side, it's been this kind of petri dish where there's very fast, development and lots of ideas, and some of them were awful, and some of them crashed and burned, but a lot of interesting stuff came out of it. But then at the end, after that kind of period of time, you could kind of see what kind of worked, and then other developers on other blockchains basically said, well, this works, and I'm gonna port all this over to this new blockchain,
right?
But because it hadn't had the kind of the petri dish experimentation phase, the fact they got the kind of the right answer, but they didn't have the workings, and people, I guess the community hadn't built up through the workings to get to the end goal, kind of meant that no one was very interested in it, because it was obviously a kind of a copycat. So I think it will be interesting, and certainly on the games. The game side, I guess, will be different, because I kind of think what will happen, and we kind of already see it, I think, is with things like Axie Infinity, where you can obviously trade the axes on OpenSea, but basically it's such a closed community, or close community, that the activity happens on kind of the official, the in-app marketplace is where, as far as I understand, the majority of that access happens. And I guess what's interesting with games is, while they are on blockchains, and while in future there probably will be these clever interoperability or these bridging layers, probably people will basically play on their game and trade on that marketplace. So actually games will potentially actually be quite insular.
Yeah, and I think one of the good things, like one of the ones I'm watching, is how Blancos evolves.
Yes.
I think that's a great example. Because it's the quality of the game is without question, but the fact that it's so isolated from the rest of the NFT ecosystem, community, collectors, traders, and everything, that's going to be, I think, one of the purest case studies for how that going for an adjacent layer 1 first approach, how successful that can be. And so I think, to your point, whether or not the in-game marketplace or the in-app marketplace can carry it enough, that I think that's one of the things we're definitely watching.
I'll say the one interesting thing about Blancos is, because I've been very interested in the project, and once it's been out in beta, I've been less interested in actually playing it, although I have done so, but much more interested in the characters. I mean, for me, it's a very character thing. So the value of it is it's kind of almost the wrong way around. That the characters are so brilliant, you kind of want them to be. You don't want them to be siloed, because they have the best character designs probably in games at the moment.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of
yeah, and I think that's definitely a great point, because it's that underlying collector's nature that goes with some of these things that I think is such an important driver. Like, you play any traditional game, whether it's Call of Duty or Pokemon, the need for having the coolest looking stuff, that's like, there's no question, that's driving multi-billion-dollar economy, gaming economy. And so the ability to engage, because NFTs are by very nature are highly social with their applications right now. I think that's something that really needs to be a focus of developers, as they're framing their ecosystems, because that sociability is key to long-term success.
Cool, good. So we're kind of wrapping up. I guess we're at the start of the year when maybe people are still kind of thinking in a predictive tone. I always quite like predictions. Not that I expect them to come correct or not, but I think the process of thinking about predictions is interesting. So how do you see 2021 kind of panning out? What will be the kind of key things for you? They may or may not happen, but kind of what are you looking for potentially to happen?
Yeah, so we're very bullish on core cryptocurrencies right now. The Bitcoins, Ethereums. As it relates to the NFT market, as I said, I think the name of the game for 2021 is going to be liquidity and access. And so I think a lot of the innovations as it relates to fractionalization, indices, and things like that are going to start taking a bigger role. And I think that's going to help establish, to a certain degree, a more universal way to define and value, this non-fungible asset class. And so I think with some of the big releases that are planned for 2021, I think a lot of games are going to start hitting their stride. I know Neon District, for instance, is coming out of the shadows now, and so I think it's going to be something where the applications and a lot of the builders of the last 3 years are going to start seeing the fruits of their labor, while new cryptocurrency users who just enjoyed a 10x run up, of their assets are going to be looking for a place to put those winnings. And I think the friendliness and the accessibility of the NFT market is going to be one of those places, and so that's where we're positioning ourselves right now.
Cool. Lovely. Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, Craig. That was really interesting.
Yeah, likewise, John. I really appreciate the conversation. It's great.
So I will put your Twitter into the show notes. Any other areas where people should be looking at the moment? I guess we should put the website in the decks in as well.
Yeah, so Polyient Games is a site, and then follow us on Twitter at Polyient Games. So those are go in there, you'll find pretty much everything you need. So this was great. Really appreciate it, John.
Cool. Thank you, and thank you, listeners, for making it through. We are talking to the people who are building this kind of crazy world of blockchain meets games, which is we think it's going in one direction, and then next week it's often going in a totally different direction. So as much as me, really. But hopefully you find this stuff interesting, and obviously we think this is really kind of changing the way games are going to be made and played in the future. So this is kind of why we're spending the time doing it. So please subscribe. We're on YouTube, and you can also get us through your all the typical podcast subscription channels. So please do subscribe. But thanks for listening, and see you next week.